Lately, the word Greenland has been on everyone's lips. The subject is constantly mentioned by the media. Long perceived as a barren and pointless icy desert, Greenland is now at the center of every ambition. The United States, Europe, China, Russia, everyone is looking toward this island. President Trump wants at all costs to get his hands on it. You will see through this video that the interest of the United States in Greenland is nothing new. From the Vikings to the Danes, this island has been the object of rivalries for centuries. With barely 55,000 inhabitants today, Greenland has nonetheless become one of the most strategic and lucrative territories on the planet. But why? How did a territory covered 80% by ice become one of the most coveted places on Earth? To understand this, we must go far back in time. Sit back comfortably. Let's dive together into the unknown and fascinating history of Greenland. Contrary to what is often imagined, Greenland has never been an empty land. The first known inhabitants of Greenland were Inuit peoples, who crossed from North America via the scattered islands off the coast of present-day Canada. Several waves of migration occurred, starting around 2500 BC, representing different Inuit cultures. They lived from hunting seals, walrus, narwhals, fishing, and had developed a way of life perfectly adapted to extreme cold. For millennia, these peoples lived alone on this vast territory, until the arrival of strange ships from the east. Around the year 982, a Viking named Eric the Red, so called because of the color of his hair, sought a new place to settle. Born in Norway, he followed his family into exile after his father was condemned for murder, and they settled in Iceland. But Eric himself lived a violent life. Involved in several deadly conflicts, he was eventually banished from the island. Destitute and without refuge, Eric turned west, drawn by tales of unknown lands. He sailed along the southern and then western coast, identifying partially habitable areas. After several years of exploration, Eric returned to Iceland to recruit settlers. To convince them, he named this territory Greenland, the Green Land, a deliberately misleading name. The expedition was launched, but proved perilous. Out of 25 ships, only 14 reached their destination. 2 colonies were founded near today's cities of Qaqortoq and Nuuk. For several centuries, thousands of Vikings lived on this island, hunting seals, walrus, and whales. These famous stories even became the subject of sagas recounting the life of this protagonist. Eric's son, Leif Erikson, pushed exploration even further, becoming the first known European to reach North America, and also contributed to the Christianization of Greenland. Why? The reasons for the failure of these colonies after half a millennium remain unclear, although it is possible that the Little Ice Age, a period of global cooling beginning around 1300 and lasting until the mid-19th century, made life increasingly impossible. Only the Inuit peoples survived, thanks to their way of life far better adapted to these extreme cold conditions. In 1492, Greenland was visited by the Portuguese navigator João Fernandes Lavrador, and 10 years later, his compatriot Gaspar Corte-Real reached its coasts, but the extreme cold prevented any lasting settlement. It was not until the 18th century that a true European presence was established. The Kingdom of Denmark-Norway claimed the island and sent a religious mission in 1721, hoping to find descendants of the Vikings. But in vain they found no one. The Danes therefore turned toward converting the Inuit and creating trading ports. Little by little, Greenland became a Danish colony and fell under its domination. A situation that technically lasts to this day, though strongly contested. In 1814, Denmark officially retained the island, and in 1933, the Permanent Court of International Justice confirmed Danish sovereignty over Greenland. Greenland then seemed destined to remain a forgotten territory, until the world plunged into the Second World War. In April 1940, Denmark was invaded and occupied by Nazi Germany. Cut off from its homeland, Greenland suddenly found itself left to fend for itself. Against the orders of the Danish government in exile, Ambassador Henrik Kaufmann signed an agreement with the United States, authorizing the installation of American forces on the island. The United States then established 14 military bases along Greenland's west and east coasts. Greenland thus became a central strategic point aimed at countering German submarines and securing transatlantic shipping. At the same time, Germany set up secret weather stations there to obtain crucial data for its naval operations in the North Atlantic. Clashes erupted between Allied forces and German units until the definitive withdrawal of the Third Reich. At the end of the war, Denmark officially regained Greenland, but the United States, now firmly established, were in no hurry to leave. Washington considered the island naturally part of its sphere of influence, in accordance with the Monroe Doctrine. This American policy, founded in 1823 by President James Monroe, views the entire American continent as a strategic zone of interest for the United States. In simpler terms, this is our backyard. Get out.
Which means Americans consider Greenland an island that should belong to them by right, even though it is under Danish authority. And this is not the first time the United States has tried to get its hands on Greenland. As early as 1867, after purchasing Alaska from Russia, the United States already considered acquiring Greenland, with Secretary of State William Seward describing it as a land rich in natural resources and strategically essential. The project failed due to lack of political support in Washington. In 1916, the United States bought the Danish West Indies, now called the US Virgin Islands. In exchange, they officially recognized Denmark's sovereignty over all of Greenland. But the idea of buying Greenland never disappeared. In 1946, President Harry Truman offered Denmark $100 million to acquire Greenland. Once again, Copenhagen refused. For Danish authorities, the island is not just a territory, it is a historical responsibility. In 1951, a defense agreement was finally signed between the two countries. It authorized a permanent American military presence and led to the development of Thule Air Base, which became one of the strategic pillars of the United States in the Arctic. During the Cold War, Danish sovereignty over Greenland was largely theoretical. In reality, it was the United States that exercised dominant influence. But in 1979, the island obtained self-government, then enhanced autonomy in 2009. Greenland now manages most of its own affairs, education, justice, and natural resources, while Denmark retains defense, currency, and foreign policy. With the end of the Cold War, the idea of buying Greenland faded somewhat. But that was before Donald Trump came to power. Since his first term, the American president has increasingly stated that Greenland should belong to the United States. And here we are today, all asking the same question. Why does Greenland, a frozen, isolated, hostile territory, arouse such desire? We've already partly answered this, but let me explain why Greenland is actually one of the most valuable pieces on today's global geopolitical chessboard. One of the main reasons Greenland is now so coveted is that it is becoming increasingly central with climate change. As the ice melts, shorter Arctic routes between Europe, America, and Asia are opening. The distance between the ports of Shanghai and Rotterdam
could drop from 21,000 to 13,000 kilometers. Travel between Asia and Europe could be reduced by 40%. And all of that means less time, less fuel, more profit. But that's far from the only reason. Beneath its melting ice, Greenland is overflowing with riches, rare earth elements, uranium, lithium, copper, and potentially offshore oil and gas. Estimates suggest up to 17.5 billion barrels of oil and 4,200 billion cubic meters of exploitable natural gas. These resources are essential to modern technologies: batteries, wind turbines, solar panels, smartphones. Today, global production of many of these resources is largely dominated by China. In a world that is becoming ever more competitive, where major powers seek to reduce dependence on others, Greenland appears as a major strategic alternative, capable of heavily influencing the global economic and geopolitical balance. And that's not all. Militarily, Greenland is extremely strategic. It lies directly on the shortest trajectory between Russia and the United States. In other words, if a nuclear war breaks out, it passes over Greenland. The territory is also crucial for radar systems, satellites, and air bases. Result? Climate change is making Greenland more and more strategic.
The problem is that Greenland is a European territory, and attacking Denmark means attacking a NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, member. And NATO is built on a simple principle: one for all for one. If the United States attacks an ally, how far could this go? And what about the Greenlanders themselves? Polls are clear. 85% refuse to become American, and a majority want independence. Many fear replacing Danish supervision with American supervision. The Greenlandic Prime Minister summed it up perfectly. We are not for sale. As you can now see, Greenland is not just an island. It is a mirror of climate change, a test for international law, an economic battlefield, and a symbol of the return of empires. For centuries, this frozen land resisted Vikings, storms, and colonizers. The question now is whether it will resist the new Arctic gold rush. Because today, Greenland is no longer on the margins of the world. It is at its very epicenter. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't hesitate to subscribe and leave a like to support the channel. Thank you, and see you very soon for more videos.